Last year, I made the hardest decision of my life. I walked away from everything that I'd built. A business that on the outside looked successful. Clients, cash, the works. But if I'm honest, this wasn't the first time that I'd made a life-changing decision. It started way earlier than that. So let me quickly take you back. When I was a kid, my dad ran a shop in Covent Garden. He sold luxury shoes and clothes, and it wouldn't be uncommon for a celebrity to come in and buy a pair of brogues or a leather jacket, something like that. You know, back when leather jackets were cool. Now, for a couple of years, I remember we even lived in the back of the shop where the stock was. It wasn't always glamorous, it definitely wasn't easy, but I do remember it being fun. I saw my dad work 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, doing whatever was necessary to keep everything afloat. Some days were brilliant, the shop was buzzing, cash was flowing through the door, and I remember we'd finish off the day by going over to the Oasis, which was on the other side of the road, and going for a swim in their outdoor pool. Whereas other days were brutal. You had staff stealing or not showing up to work, empty tills, stock prices going up, and stressed out late night conversations. It was the kind of tension that even as a kid, I could always feel. I remember plenty of nights where I'd be laying on that mattress at the back of the shop whilst my dad was sorting out stock until the early hours of the morning. Now, when I was no older than 6, I remember my dad giving me a challenge. And this was my first taste of entrepreneurship. On the till, there was a pot of badges. And I remember him saying to me that if you could sell someone this badge for 20p, you get to keep the coin. And that was it. It was like a game. How many customers could I upsell a day? I'm pretty sure my record was 7. I'd stand there on a chair, because I wasn't old enough to see actually over the counter, eyeing up the customers and guilt tripping them into handing me over 20p. Now, I still remember that first sale I made. That 20p felt like a fucking fortune. Now, it wasn't just the money though. It was the feeling that came with it. The feeling that I had just made something happen. That I could actually influence an outcome by what I said, or how I looked, or fluttering my eyelashes, whatever it was, or whatever it took to get that 20p. Now, at the time, I didn't realize that that 20p coin represented far more than that small fortune that I just got. It represented autonomy, possibility, influence, and freedom. Now, obviously, this wasn't what I was thinking at the time, but there was something subconscious that was happening deep within me. And looking back now, it was in tons of these mini moments that it got me hooked. It planted a seed in me, one that was far deeper than what I could have understood at the time. The idea that you did have control and that you could build your own life, create your own outcomes, be free, have autonomy and control. But somewhere along the way, that vision got buried. Fast forward a good few years, and when I was a teenager, I was selling absolutely everything and anything that I could get my hands on, many of which are not suitable for this video. I'd sell clothes, hats, jailbroken fire sticks. And then when I was 17, that's when I properly started my own entrepreneurial journey. I worked my bollocks off. And over the next 5 years, I'd gone from being a mobile personal trainer that worked in people's front rooms to building a highly successful local private training facility. And that was called JT Training, for those who are still around from those days. Week after week, month after month, the sessions were packed. I was at full capacity and word of mouth was absolutely flying around the local area. Any post that was on Facebook, I was constantly getting tagged in it as a recommendation for the place to go. At this point, I thought I'd made it. As someone in my early 20s, I had more money coming in than I knew what to do with. Now, this led to me starting up a property portfolio, but that's a conversation for another video. But shortly after, I started to realize I was stuck. I was tied to one location, still trading time for money in a highly commoditized marketplace. And I was fucking exhausted all of the time. I'd start work at 5 a.m. and I often wouldn't finish until roughly around 11 p.m. And it wouldn't be uncommon for me to occasionally try and sneak in a cheeky 10-minute nap in between clients. I also thought it'd be a really good idea at this point in time to get a dog. Safe to say, when you're waking up at 5 a.m., the last thing you want to see on your front doormat is puppy shit. Anyway, like for many, when COVID came, I was forced to temporarily shut. And it was at this moment that I made one of my first huge decisions in my entrepreneurial journey. I decided to sell it all. In the matter of a couple of weeks, everything that I'd built over the past 5 years was all gone. I got rid of the lease, I contacted all of my clients, and I sold all of my kit. There was no going back, and I went online. I made the decision to close it all, invest 20 grand into a mentor, and start to build my online high-performance coaching business. Now, this transition gave me the taste of freedom that I'd never had before. And with that freedom, I moved 150 miles away from everything and everyone that I'd ever known, down to the sunny South Coast. And over the next 4 years, I worked tirelessly to build an online presence and business. And man, I remember I was shit scared to make my first post on social media. They were so bad. I was worried about what people back home would think. I worried about my schoolmates seeing me waffle online about mindset and fitness, and I thought, what the fuck are they gonna think? I shit you not. The first video that I took me 3 hours to make, and it was a 60-second clip, but I sucked it up and I kept at it. Over the next 4 years, I ended up working with hundreds of clients from all over the world, from Australia to Switzerland, to UK to America. And it was at this part of my journey, whilst I was helping people to create powerful change within their health, that I started to become really passionate about behavior change science and human psychology. I became obsessed with trying to understand why humans think, feel, and behave the way they do. To be honest, in the early days, it was mainly so I could figure out what was going on in my own head and with my own behaviors. But ultimately, everything that I learned for myself, I then started to teach to other people. And as a result, my clients started to get better and better results. And very quickly, this led to me helping them with things that were far beyond the scope of just fitness. We ended up covering pretty much every single area of their life. Habits, relationships, like identity change, limiting beliefs. To be honest, whatever it was in their life that was lagging behind their expectation of where they wanted it to be, we covered it. And soon enough, these conversations then started to expand again outside of their own personal remit with health and high performance, because we'd get those areas dusted off relatively quick. Now, clients were over the moon with the type of results that they were getting, so they'd start coming to me with questions around how they run their business, how they lead their teams, and how they can buy back more time. And pretty quickly, I became the person in their life that they came to when they wanted results and change, both in their personal life and in their professional life. Anytime there was a problem to be solved, they brought it to their board of advisors, me. Now, this led to a lot of leadership coaching, business consulting, and even working with my clients' teams. And I'm not gonna lie, at first, I thought it was a fluke. One client asking for help around business, then 2, then 5, and before long, half of my calls had nothing to do with health and high performance. They were about hiring, firing, leadership, culture, hitting KPIs, setting goals. The problems kept getting bigger, which required me to upskill. And as I did, and we solved those problems, the rewards were far greater than just a couple of kgs that were lost. And honestly, I fucking loved it. Now, as I've always said, helping someone lose 10 kilograms is amazing. The impact that that can have on an individual's life is astronomical. But for me personally, helping someone to unlock 10 times more freedom from their life and their business, that hit different. Because what I noticed is when you're working with entrepreneurs and you're able to help them create a result like that, they're not the only person that positively benefits. It's their partners, their kids, and the teams that they have to show up for. There is a huge ripple effect that takes place. And I'm all about making the biggest impact that I possibly can. And then one day, a client rang me and said, "Jack, can you help me navigate a £13.4 million acquisition?" Well, that's not exactly what they said, but that is exactly what we did. After being hired to help assist through this process, working directly with the founder, consulting their teams, and meeting them in London for full-day immersive events, I realised that I was capable of so much more than I thought. And I continued doing work like this for a number of months. However, I never reflected this on the outside of my business. So no one would have had a fucking clue. To be honest, for a number of different reasons like imposter syndrome and fear of judgment, I stuck to what I knew in the health and high performance space. But this led to problems that I wasn't even aware of at the time. The thing is, on the outside, everything looked great. Clients were buzzing and getting results, money was flowing in and the business was growing, and I was starting to gain a little bit of traction online. I even had my first experience of virality when I made a reel about testosterone that got 500,000 views and 1,000 hate comments. Get in. But on the inside, I'm gonna be totally honest, I was secretly starting to hate it. Not the clients, they were class. I've always had a really strict vetting process of clients that I work with, making sure that the relationships are always the highest of quality, which is why the majority of the clients that I work with are now mates. But I had this weird feeling that I just couldn't shake. Like every Monday I'd sit down at my laptop and I'd have a pit at the bottom of my stomach. It wasn't burnout, it wasn't laziness. And after searching long and hard trying to figure out this answer, it turns out it was misalignment. I had changed, but the business hadn't changed with me. And if I look back now, I'd felt this way for roughly around 18 months. I was hyper aware of the symptoms, I just didn't know what was causing it. And the truth is, I wasn't the only one that paid the price. My partner would go to bed on her own pretty much every night, whilst I'd be sitting in this office, tying up loose ends, finishing off client plans, and replying to DMs. And on the weekends, even if I was physically there, mentally, I was always distant. Mainly trying to figure out why I felt this way, because I just couldn't put my finger on it. I felt like I was living my life for 18 months in this constant state of like low hum anxiety and stress. Always wondering how can I actually get rid of this feeling, but never feeling like I was able to slow down enough to fix it. Now, I didn't see my family and friends for years. I went through a 2-year period where I don't think I saw any of my mates. Because the truth is, I isolated myself. I built a business and I lost myself in the process. The way I explain it is kind of like trying to put on an old pair of shoes that don't quite fit you anymore. Of course, you can jam your foot in if you really try, maybe even walk around in them all day. But come the end of the day, your feet are going to be battered, and it's going to leave you with a lot of discomfort, which then makes it harder every single day to put back on those shoes. And that's how it felt pretty much every day for around 18 months. And for full transparency, there were nights where I'd sit there with Chloe and I'd really consider throwing the towel in, even though I had no clue what I'd be doing instead. I was confused, conflicted, and really frustrated. I couldn't figure out for the life of me why I felt this way when everything on paper looked great. And it was one conversation that we had one night in December last year where I made a commitment, not just to her, but to myself. Enough was enough. 2025 wasn't gonna be more of the same shit. Everything needed to change. Me, the business, all of it. So upon making that commitment, I stopped fighting it. I stopped trying to figure it out, and I just sat with it. I fully surrendered, as I often say to my clients to do, which I know sounds really woo-woo and wanky, but I really just spent a good few months sitting with myself and my thoughts and my feelings, not judging them, just allowing them to simmer. No distractions, no forcing, just me, my thoughts, and the brutal honesty that something had to change. And it was fucking uncomfortable, by the way, because you're admitting to yourself that the thing that you'd spent years building isn't the thing anymore. But deep down, I already knew. I had known for months. I just didn't have the bollocks to tell myself until now. So I made the call. I wasn't gonna tweak it. I wasn't gonna fix it. I wasn't gonna drag it out for another year, hoping that it would be different this time. I was gonna burn it down and start again. Not because it failed, far from it, but because it served its purpose at that point in my journey, and hopefully all of my clients' journeys, and it was now time to move on and evolve. So, what now? Simple. I'm going back to the start. Back to the kid selling badges for 20p. Back to the guy who started this whole journey in the first place of chasing freedom. Because that's what this has always been about. Not follows, not goals that I feel like I should be hitting because some guru or mentor told me so. Freedom, fun, growth, and impact. That is it. Those are the only metrics that matter to me moving forward. And everything that I do and everything that I build will be through the lens of those 4 drivers. So I've decided that I'm building a business that feeds my life, feeds the type of person that I am, and not starves it. And I'm helping other entrepreneurs to do the same. Because let's be honest, entrepreneurs are the ones who actually change shit. Not the people playing it safe from their sofa, not the ones posting motivational quotes on social media all day. The ones who build, the ones who bet on themselves, the ones who put food on the table for other people, the ones who wake up every day and take risks to create something that matters. And that's the people that I relate to the most. I think it's fair to say that it's in my DNA. Which brings me on to the current chapter, where I am launching Escape and Scale. It's not some get rich quick bollocks. It's not scale to 20k months in 10 minutes either. It's about being able to experience the freedom that you started your business for in the first place. All those years ago when you too set out on your quest and revoked the idea of a 9-to-5. So let me give you an insight into what it is that we're now doing. We're showing entrepreneurs how to run their business and lead their teams in 4 days a week or less, without having to worry about the business falling apart because you're not there. Finally, giving you the precious time that you can spend with your kids. Having the freedom for you to fuck off whenever you feel like it, without everything falling apart. Maybe you can go and play golf on Friday like you keep thinking about. Maybe you can finally finish early enough to start taking the missus back out on date nights. Real freedom is what we're focusing on scaling, not just your revenue. Because over the past decade, in my own experience, and after talking to hundreds of business owners, I've come to realize that that's the real currency of success. Yeah, money's cool. Success and status are cool. But if you're not free, you're still a prisoner. You're just a prisoner with a nice watch and a fancy car. So if you're the kind of person who didn't get into business just to be shackled to it and stuck inside of it, stick around. Because I'm on a mission to show the world that scaling your life is far more important than just scaling your income. And as always, if you enjoyed this one or you relate, show me some love in the comments and let me know about your own experience. I'll catch you on the next one.